A crumpled, gray form lay still, her dark fur matted with dust and something much darker. Mark slammed on the brakes, the screech of tires momentarily drowning out the low hum of the engine. He'd been lost in thought, miles from anywhere, and now he'd hit something. He'd felt the sickening thud, a jolt that went right through him. His heart hammered as he scrambled out of his ute. He'd expected to see a kangaroo, maybe a dingo. But it was a koala, her small, fragile body almost hidden in the dried grass. And then he saw it, a tiny bundle clinging to her, its soft fur the color of pale ash. A baby. A wave of nausea washed over Mark. He'd never felt so helpless. He'd lived in the outback his whole life, accustomed to the harsh realities of nature, but this was different. He couldn't just leave them there. The koala was barely breathing, a shallow, ragged gasp escaping her. He carefully scooped her up, the baby clinging tighter, his tiny claws gripping her fur as if his life depended on it. The weight of her, so small yet so heavy with fragility, was a stark reminder of the careless act he'd just committed. He placed them both gently on the back seat, his hands trembling. He didn't know what to do, but he knew they needed help. He set off at breakneck speed towards the nearest town, his mind racing. The Australian Zoo Hospital was a whirlwind of activity. The emergency room, usually filled with exotic birds and injured reptiles, was now dominated by the presence of the two koalas. The older one, they said, was critical. A head injury, a collapsed lung, multiple contusions. Mark watched, his throat tight, as they rushed her into surgery. The little one, they nicknamed Fanta, was placed in a small incubator. Hours crawled by. Mark sat in the waiting room, the sterile air heavy with the smell of antiseptic. He couldn't shake the image of the koala, so broken and vulnerable. He kept picturing her lying on the roadside, her life hanging in the balance, and felt a heavy responsibility settle upon his shoulders. He hadn't meant to hurt her, but the consequences were his, regardless of his intent. He found himself pacing the small waiting room, the rhythmic click of his boots echoing his growing anxiety. A doctor finally approached, his expression serious. The adult koala. We had serious concerns. She was touch and go, truly. Mark's stomach plummeted. He had to know, was she going to make it? The doctor paused, then a small smile touched his lips. But, he continued, she surprised us all. That little one. He gestured towards a window overlooking the intensive care area. Fanta was perched on a small branch, his head cocked to the side. He never left her. Even during the surgery, he clung to her, right through all the procedures. It was remarkable. The staff believes it made a difference. He paused, choosing his words carefully. His presence, her determination. Maybe it was just the will to survive. But she's responding. We believe she'll make a full recovery. Mark felt a lump form in his throat. He'd almost taken her life, and now her son was helping to save it. He couldn't believe the profound connection between them. What about him? He whispered, pointing to Fanta. He's doing great. We've already seen him move away from her. He's curious, playful. He's young, strong. They both are.